Story unfolds with June Havens, a car restoration specialist, rummaging through old vehicles in search of the perfect parts. The scene then transitions to Wichita Airport, where we meet Roy Miller, a rogue spy on the run. Roy is scanning the crowd, specifically eyeing travelers with roller bags. His gaze settles on June, who's also wheeling one. He watches her intently. Moments later, he bumps into her, once before the security checkpoint and again afterward. They share a laugh over the coincidence. As boarding begins, June, despite having a confirmed reservation, is told the flight is overbooked. Roy, who is allowed to board, leans in and tells her sometimes things happen for a reason. He boards the plane. Meanwhile, federal agents are seen discussing Roy, revealing that he killed a dozen people in a government lab and blew it up. Their superior asks if Roy has something called the Zephyr. The agents aren't sure. Reviewing airport footage, they spot June and assume she's working with Roy. Agent Fitzgerald orders her back onto the flight. The plane is sparsely populated. Roy and June introduce themselves. June shares that her younger sister, April, is getting married on Saturday, and she's restoring their late father's car as a wedding gift. She relaxes with a drink and talks about her dream of one day driving to Cape Horn, while Roy discreetly surveys the other passengers. Charmed by him, she heads to the restroom to freshen up, and Roy steadies her due to turbulence. While she's inside, a violent fight breaks out. Roy is ambushed by the remaining passengers and crew. Unbeknownst to June, Roy kills everyone on board, including the pilots. When she emerges, unaware of the chaos, she walks up to Roy and kisses him. She quickly apologizes, blaming it on the alcohol. More turbulence hits, and Roy calmly tells June that he's contained the situation. He casually mentions that he also killed the pilots. June, thinking it's all some elaborate joke, laughs it off and plays along. Roy heads into the cockpit to figure out how to land the plane. As the turbulence worsens, June notices the dead bodies of the passengers slumping over in their seats and panics. She rushes to the cockpit, where Roy is focused on landing the aircraft. He tells her to buckle up and explains that they can't land at an airport because agents will be waiting for them. When June presses for more information, Roy simply says, "The less you know, the better." He manages to land the plane on a highway but loses control, skidding off the road and crashing into a cornfield. They exit the wreckage, and Roy hands June a drink before tending to a gunshot wound he sustained earlier during the flight. While patching himself up, he warns her that she might be questioned by various officials. He instructs her to say she doesn't know him, and under no circumstances should she get into a vehicle with them or go anywhere they claim is a safe location. June soon passes out from the knockout drug Roy had slipped into the drink. She later wakes up in her own home, disoriented and confused. Around the house, she finds notes left by Roy with instructions on what to do. On the news, she sees a report about the plane crash from the previous night. Her ex-boyfriend Rodney stops by to check on her, concerned since she was on the flight. He invites her to dinner, but she brushes him off, saying they'll talk later. Still shaken, June tries to convince herself that everything is fine and it's just another normal day. Unbeknownst to her, federal agents are now tailing her. While shopping for a wedding dress with her sister April, June is stunned to learn that April plans to sell their late father's GTO. As June steps outside, she's suddenly surrounded by federal agents and asked to get into their car. During the ride, they question her about Roy, but she insists she doesn't know him. Agent Fitzgerald tells her that Roy is a former agent who went rogue a week ago and is now considered dangerous and unstable. They transfer her to another vehicle, assuring her she'll be safe. But out of nowhere, gunfire erupts, and the agents in the car are killed. June, panicking, tries to steer the car from the back seat. Roy suddenly drops onto the vehicle from above and urges her to unlock the door so he can help. As bullets fly, Roy performs a series of stunts and manages to jump into the car. He quickly gains control and brings the vehicle to a stop. Roy and June then exit the car. Gunfire continues to erupt as Roy keeps shooting at agents trying to ambush them. He reassures June that she's handling the situation well, even as chaos unfolds around them. He tells her to stay behind the car for safety, but June, overwhelmed and terrified, bolts from the scene. Roy follows her wherever she goes, first onto a bus and then into a fire station where her ex-boyfriend Rodney works as a firefighter. Rodney agrees to talk, and as June recounts everything that's happened since she boarded the plane, he assumes she's just overwhelmed by the stress of her sister's wedding and is imagining things. That's when Roy shows up. He confronts them, pulls a gun, and takes June hostage as they exit the building. He forces her into his car, and when Rodney tries to intervene, Roy shoots him in the leg. Roy then explains to June that the restaurant's security cameras will show her being taken against her will, which will help clear her name. He also tells her that shooting Rodney in the leg will make him a local hero and practically guarantee his promotion at the fire department. June, panicked and furious, demands that Roy stop the car and let her go. He pulls into a parking lot and tells her she's free to leave, even though she'd be safer staying with him. He warns that every second he spends chasing her puts Simon's life in greater danger. After a moment of hesitation, June decides to trust him and chooses to stay. Later, while shopping at a store along the way, June sees a news report confirming that Rodney has indeed been hailed as a hero. That night, during their journey, Roy finally shows her the Zephyr, a perpetual energy battery capable of powering an entire city. He explains that it was invented by Simon, a brilliant young scientist. Roy and Fitzgerald were originally assigned to protect Simon, but Roy discovered that Fitzgerald planned to steal the Zephyr and kill Simon. So Roy hid Simon in a safe location and went back to retrieve the Zephyr, but Fitzgerald framed him, making it look like Roy had gone rogue. Roy tells June that all of this happened just before he met her. He assures her that he's good at what he does, and for now, they're safe for the night. Back at the agency, federal agents confirm that June is just an ordinary civilian. Meanwhile, Roy and June arrive at the safe house where Roy had previously left Simon. But Simon is missing. Roy was too late. However, Simon has left behind clues indicating he can be found on a train in Austria. Unbeknownst to June, they're surrounded by armed men. Soon, an ambush begins. Roy tells her that these aren't federal agents, they're mercenaries working for Antonio Quintana, a Spanish arms dealer also after the Zephyr. June, completely unfamiliar with this world, panics and struggles to keep up with Roy's lead. To protect her, Roy drugs her again. She drifts in and out of consciousness during their capture and escape from Antonio's men. In her hazy state, she sees Roy transporting her first by plane, then by boat. Eventually, Roy brings her to a remote island off the grid, which he calls his home. June wakes up wearing a bikini and finds Roy preparing to cook freshly caught fish. Upset, she confronts him for changing her clothes while she was unconscious. Frustrated, she storms off to explore the island. While alone, she notices a message on Roy's phone with a Boston address. As she studies it, her own phone rings. Her sister April is calling. By answering the call, June unknowingly reveals their location to Antonio's men. Soon after, a drone attack targets them. Roy is confused and June admits she answered her phone earlier. When it's time to escape, June refuses to board the helicopter. Roy knocks her out again, this time with a neck pinch, and transports them onto a train traveling through the Alps. June wakes up alone in a cabin, missing a message Roy left for her. Meanwhile, Roy is already with Simon. June heads to the dining car for breakfast, where she encounters Bernard, a German assassin. Bernard manages to convince June that he is Simon, claiming he hasn't seen Roy yet. Just then, June notices a message stuck to her shoe, Roy's note saying he's already with Simon. Realizing Bernard is lying, she tries to slip away, but he follows her into the train's kitchen and attempts to assault her. June fights back as best she can. At that moment, Roy and Simon arrive. A brutal fight breaks out between Roy and Bernard, ending with Roy knocking Bernard out of a window, where he's struck and killed by an oncoming train. Meanwhile, federal agents are searching the train, but Roy, June, and Simon manage to escape. Roy checks them into a hotel in Salzburg, Austria. Outside the station, Fitzgerald confronts Roy and gives him two options: sell the Zephyr and disappear, or surrender and ensure Simon and June's safety. Roy returns to the hotel, and June overhears him on the phone with a woman, arranging a meeting for later that night. Disappointed, having hoped to spend the evening with Roy, June follows him. She sees him meet with a woman and overhears her asking about June. Roy coldly replies that she's nobody. June also hears him negotiating a deal to sell the Zephyr to Antonio. Shocked and heartbroken, she heads back to the hotel, but is intercepted by CIA agents. She's brought to Isabel George, the CIA's director of counterespionage. Isabel tells June that Roy has indeed gone rogue and has been lying to her from the very beginning. They show her airport surveillance footage where Roy is seen using her luggage to smuggle the Zephyr past security. Isabel instructs June to return to the hotel before Roy gets back. She's given a pen transmitter to signal the CIA when she's with Roy and the Zephyr. Roy meets her at the hotel and shows her the Zephyr, which is now beginning to overheat. June confronts him, revealing that she overheard his conversation with Antonio. She discreetly clicks the pen, alerting the CIA. She urges Roy to turn himself in. Moments later, CIA agents storm the hotel. They take Simon and June into custody while Roy escapes onto the rooftops of nearby buildings. A high-speed chase unfolds as agents pursue him across the roofs. Roy appears to be heading toward the river. Cornered, he's seemingly shot and falls into the water. A panicked June rushes to the riverbank but finds no sign of him. The next day, June watches as Simon is escorted away by Fitzgerald. Isabel informs her that Roy's body still hasn't been recovered. June is then taken back home. It's Saturday, April's wedding day. During the reception, April raises a toast to June, thanking her for all the sacrifices she's made. The scene shifts to Simon being driven somewhere by Fitzgerald, who kills his fellow CIA agent and contacts Antonio, telling him that although he doesn't have the Zephyr, he'll deliver its inventor instead. Back at the auto shop, June hears the same song Roy used as his ringtone on the island. It sparks a memory, and she decides to visit the Boston address she had seen on his phone. She drives off in her father's GTO. Along the way, she realizes she's being followed and uses some of the skills she picked up from Roy to evade her pursuers. Believing it to be one of Roy's safe houses, June arrives at the address and tries to sneak in, only to get soaked by the lawn sprinklers. An elderly couple living there lets her inside. While her clothes are drying, she asks them about Roy Miller, but they claim not to know anyone by that name. June begins to think she's made a mistake until she spots a photo of a younger Roy and realizes these are his parents. She learns that Roy's real name is Matthew Knight. The couple believes their son, a former Army Ranger captain and Eagle Scout, is dead. Roy's mother fondly recalls how her son always saved lives and was an exceptional swimmer who could hold his breath for an unusually long time. June realizes that Roy is still alive. Later, June deliberately gives up her location, claiming she has the Zephyr. Antonio's men kidnap her and take her to Spain. There, she's injected with a truth serum. Under its influence, June reveals that Roy had orchestrated everything. He made her follow him at the hotel so she would turn him in and still make it back in time for her sister's wedding. When Antonio demands to know the location of the Zephyr, June admits she doesn't know. Antonio, furious, screams that Roy is dead, unaware that Roy is actually on the roof above them at that very moment. Fitzgerald then arrives and offers to sell Simon to Antonio for a large sum of money. He instructs Antonio to bring the payment and follow him to the river. Antonio and his men follow Fitzgerald to the river. Roy, using a tracking device planted on Simon, realizes that Simon is inside Fitzgerald's car. He prepares to pursue them but suddenly hears June's voice. Still under the influence of the truth serum, June is rambling nonstop to Antonio's men as they escort her to be executed. Roy intervenes just in time and rescues her. While still drugged, June blurts out that she wants to have sex with him. Roy tells her to hydrate to flush the serum from her system. June, feeling vulnerable, assumes Roy isn't happy to see her. Amidst the chaos and gunfire, Roy walks over, tells her he is happy, and kisses her. They then take off in pursuit of Fitzgerald and Feck on a motorcycle. A wild chase unfolds through the streets of Spain. They evade Antonio's men during the running of the bulls, where Antonio is ultimately trampled to death by the stampeding animals. Roy and June continue the chase, with June now firing back at their pursuers. Roy hands her the guns and she impresses him with her aim. He tells her she's got real skills. Meanwhile, Fitzgerald reaches the docks with Simon and prepares to escape. Roy catches up and corners him. Fitzgerald threatens to shoot Simon unless Roy drops his weapons. Roy complies and tosses the Zephyr to Fitzgerald. As Fitzgerald prepares to flee, he decides to shoot Simon, assuming he can force him to build another Zephyr. Just as he fires, Roy jumps in the way and takes the bullet. Fitzgerald escapes in an amphibious plane, carrying the now dangerously overheated Zephyr. Simon tells Roy that the Zephyr is unstable, but Roy already knows. They watch as the battery explodes, killing Fitzgerald in the process. Roy, unable to hold on any longer, collapses from the earlier gunshot. He later wakes up in a hospital in Washington, D.C., where he receives an apology from the director, who tells him that a corrupt team has been rooted out. Roy asks about June and is told she was sent home. He's warned that he can't be distracted and must forget her to continue with his job, as that was the deal when he joined the agency. He had to let go of his family and friends. The director also explains that Roy will be transferred to a secure facility soon. As they leave, a nurse enters and gives Roy his medication. He realizes he's been drugged, but then sees the nurse as June. Roy is seen drifting in and out of consciousness as June escapes with him in her car. She's shown driving for a long time. Roy wakes up in the rebuilt classic car that belonged to June's father. When he asks what day it is, Havens kisses him and says it is the someday, alluding to what she said earlier on the plane about her lifelong dream. She says they're going for a long drive to Cape Horn, and Roy is happy to go wherever she goes. They drive off to Cape Horn. The final scene shows Roy's parents receiving 2 tickets to Cape Horn, and Roy's mother insists they go. If you enjoyed this video, then subscribe and consider watching this next video on the screen.